the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast with your host, Jackie Pilosoff.
No one should have to go through a divorce feeling alone and isolated. The Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast is a production of Divorced Girl Smiling, where every show is 30 minutes aimed to empower you, help you feel validated and understood, and connect you with some of the best divorce professionals in the industry. So grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and start smiling as you join us right now for the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found and always at divorcedgirlsmiling.com. Before we get started, I want to tell you about two divorce attorneys who I think are wonderful, very trustworthy, and very dedicated. The first one is Joy Farrell, who is a divorce attorney and founder of the Farrell firm in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Joy describes herself as a person with extremely high standards and expectations. So she says, slow-moving cases, ignoring clients, and charging a lot of money for poor service were some of the things she saw when she was working at her first job as a lawyer. She started her own firm several years ago and decided not to have those standards and to make them much, much better. I can't say enough about Joy. I truly trust her. You can find Joy at farrellfirm.com. The other attorney I want to tell you about is Liz Felt Wakeman. Liz is a divorce attorney and founder of her practice, Wakeman Law Group, in the Chicago area. And I have known Liz for many years. And what I love so much about Liz is she's extremely ethical and cares so much about fairness. She's an extremely calm person. She prefers to mediate, but she also litigates. But Liz is very much about getting people what they deserve and what's fair. And I truly respect her. She's a great lawyer. If you want to learn more about Liz, you can find her on her website at wakemanlaw.net. I want to talk about two things today that both begin with the word self. Self-compassion and self-love. They have similarities, but they're very, very different. And they're both great for you, and they'll both help you have a really good divorce outcome, a great post-divorce life. And even if you're going through a divorce, they'll help you get through it so much easier and so much better and with a lot less pain. I did not come up with this idea. My guest did, and I want to introduce her. My guest is Julie Walton, LCPC. Julie is a therapist, a divorce mediator, and the founder of North Shore Reach. Julie, hi.
Hi, Jackie. Thanks for having me.
I love how we say hi, and before the podcast, it took us 30 minutes just to even hit record because we were talking so much. That's how easy Julie is to talk to and wonderful. So great to have you as always.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, let's talk. Should we start with self-compassion and then we'll get to self-love and we'll talk about how they're different. So what exactly is self-compassion?
So before we talk about those two ideals and the difference and also the similarities, I think it's really important, particularly for people who are thinking about going through or who have been through divorce, to understand how important the relationship with yourself is. And that's separate from self-love and self-compassion. So you may have heard people, particularly therapists, talk about a sense of self. And what that means, having a sense of self, having a healthy sense of self, is really understanding, um, you know, who you are, what you're about, what's important to you, and how you live your life in a way that is easy to make yourself happy, is easy to be forgiving, is easy to be in relationships. And that healthy sense of self is what leads us to self-love and self-compassion.
Okay, and I was going to say, don't you feel like when people are getting divorced, they lose that sense of self. It's like, I don't really know who I am. How could I have married this person who's so horrible and is treating me this way? And we're in this horrible divorce. What am I supposed to do now? I've been married for so long. I don't really know myself anymore. Do you hear that a lot in therapy?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because it can go both ways. When someone's contemplating divorce, oftentimes it's because they've had this moment, this reality check about, I've been living a life that's not authentic. I've come to know my sense of self, and I'm not living the way I want to be living. And so therefore I have to decide whether or not this marriage is right for me. But you're right, it goes both ways. There's a lot of people that come in and they're like, I've been living with this person under this sort of, this way of life that isn't who I want to be. And so now I need to find out who that is, who I want to be. And that's a lot of the work that we do individually when someone's going through a divorce. But both of those positions are things that happen when someone is really, really unhappy in a relationship. Either they find themselves or they recognize that they don't know themselves. And so that's where the healthy sense of self comes in and becomes really, really important in terms of self-love and self-compassion.
Okay, I love that you said that because I didn't even think about that. Maybe somebody's saying, you know what? I know who I am, and this marriage is not what I am.
Right.
And so maybe you know yourself so well, and that's why you're getting divorced. Or maybe you were blindsided and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know myself. Okay, so self compassion, when I hear that word, I think things like be kind to yourself, forgive yourself, know that you deserve the best, better than what you have now, which is why maybe you're going through a divorce. Like you just deserve to be treated better, or whatever it is. Self compassion. So, what does that mean to you? And what does that mean in a um, professional sense?
Well, I think you just totally nailed it. Self-compassion is about giving yourself the kindness and the grace and the compassion that you would give to someone else who's going through difficult times. Oftentimes, when we're in challenging situations, we have a hard time remembering that we're human and that we make choices oftentimes under duress or because we were a different person when we made those choices, and now here we are in this really challenging and hard and difficult situation, and it's hard to love ourselves. It's hard to say, like, how could I, like you said, how could I have gotten to this place? And there's many reasons why we've gotten to this place, and so being compassionate towards yourself is no different than being compassionate towards other people, but we tend to not forgive ourselves. We tend to, that disappointment that we have in ourselves tends to be like devastating as opposed to, I'm human, you know, this poor judgment years ago led me to a place that I am today that's not a good place, but I can forgive myself and I can move on. We don't always do that. We have less compassion for ourselves typically than we do for strangers. And
Especially women. Women are, and I am the same way, we are the worst. We will be so nice and have so much compassion for everybody else except ourselves. Really, the women I know, the most beautiful women, criticize themselves. I don't like my body. I don't like this. I can't believe I did this. I'm so stupid. How many times do we hear women saying that?
right, it's frequent. I mean, we focus on our imperfections and we don't give ourselves empathy and we don't give ourselves kindness, and self-compassion is really, really important because no one's perfect, and who you are at one point in your life versus who you are at another time in your life, um, means that that trajectory of life is going to bring about changes and possibly changes in your comfort level and your happiness and your relationships. And so when we talk about this from a divorce lens, being compassionate with yourself, forgiving yourself, recognizing that nobody's perfect. And it's okay to be disappointed in yourselves. Instead of seeing that as a fatal error, see that as an opportunity for growth and as a new beginning.
I want to go to a break, but I do want to give an example and tell me if you like this one, Julie. So if somebody's listening and, maybe you cheated on your husband and that's why you're getting divorced. And now you have this like self-hatred. I can't believe I did this. I'm a horrible person. What kind of a mother would have an affair? I'm just saying I don't feel this way about you if you're listening and this is your situation. I'm saying this is what women say to themselves. And we're talking about stop judging yourself, acknowledge that it was a mistake, it was a poor choice, you regret it now, but you're only human and you have to show yourself grace and kindness. What if your best friend said, I had an affair, I feel like a horrible person? You would say to your best friend, you're not, you're a good person who made a mistake. And so why can't we say that about ourselves?
Right? It's very, very difficult, but that's all kind of what I was talking about in the beginning, that when you have a really strong sense of self, when you are able to really identify with like your values and what's important to you and who you are as a person, when you know yourself, you can be more forgiving. You can say, you know what? I screwed up. I did a bad thing. I should have handled it differently. I wanted to get divorced, but I should have been more, open and transparent as opposed to having this affair, which perpetuated the divorce. Um, I, I screwed up, but at the same time, I am human and I can forgive myself because people make mistakes and I should not hold myself to a threshold of perfection. It's not realistic.
And forgiving yourself and giving yourself a break when you're not perfect, because you're not perfect. None of us are. You're listening to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. Today, I'm here with Julie Walton, who's an LCPC, a therapist, a divorce mediator, and the founder of her practice, North Shore Reach. Julie and I are talking about self-compassion and self-love, what they are and what the differences are. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about self-love, and then we're going to talk about key differences between self-compassion and self-love. We'll be right back. When I was getting divorced, it felt like there were so many legal terms being thrown at me that I didn't have a clue what they meant, and it was very intimidating and overwhelming. And my lawyer only had time to explain things and the process really briefly. I truly felt scared, anxious, and just intimidated because I didn't know anything about the process. So the bottom line was I needed to be educated and I just wasn't. So when I heard about this platform called Partwise, it's a divorce education platform to empower you with knowledge to have a well-informed divorce, I was all in. The founder is Kimberly Miller, who has been a practicing divorce attorney, a therapist, and she's a certified financial planner. So Kimberly truly knows what she's talking about, and she's put together this platform called Partwise that you can get online. It's a self-guided platform where you can listen to these modules and learn all about the divorce process. You can do it at the beginning of your divorce. You can do it in the middle of your divorce. It doesn't matter. She offers a free trial, so it's totally worth checking out. Partwise also provides all these terms, definitions of legal terms. It answers hundreds of common questions, and it just gives you the clarity you need to make the best decisions to get the best possible divorce outcome. If you want to learn more, go to part-wise.com. I also want to tell you about a wonderful divorce coach named Marty Winder Adams. Marty is the founder of her practice, Positive Communication Systems. I've known Marty now for a couple years. Oh my gosh, the most positive, upbeat, smart person I know. Marty is wonderful. She's been through a divorce. She's been a credentialed mediator for 25 years, and she just understands how you're feeling. Her niche is high achieving women. So if you want to learn more about Marty, you can find her on her website at divorcecoach4women.com, and that's the number 4. Welcome back to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. And today we're talking about self-love and self-compassion, 2 things that you really need if you want to have a really nice, good quality of life during, even, and after divorce. Okay, Julie, let's get into self-love. So in your article that you wrote for Divorced Girl Smiling, which, by the way, if you want to read it, go to divorcedgirlsmiling.com. It's on Julie's page, or you can just search like self-compassion and it will come up. And you wrote, self-love involves recognizing and appreciating one's inherent value and worth. It encompasses actions and attitudes that promote personal growth, self-acceptance, and overall happiness. And then, okay, then you go on to say it means treating yourself with kindness and blah, 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 setting sounds similar to self-compassion, but how is it different?
So some of the key differences, and self-love is more about, so as we said, self-compassion is being able to forgive yourself and giving yourself grace in hard times. Self-love is more about recognizing and practicing on a regular basis the fact that you add value, that you are worth something. And those inherent qualities are something that you keep with you at all times. You don't have to remind yourself that I'm a good mother or that I'm a strong business person. I know that because I have self love. I'm self aware and I have self love. But the key differences are, there's a couple of really important differences. And none of the differences and none of the differences and none of the similarities are so great that some people might not recognize them. But if we're going to break it down here, there are some subtle nuances that we can talk about because they are different, particularly when you're going through a divorce. So self love is centered more on recognizing and appreciating one's values and one's worth, whereas self compassion focuses on treating oneself with kindness, especially during challenging times. With self love, the way that you apply it is being proactive with your actions in terms of personal growth and well being, such as setting boundaries and engaging in self care. In contrast, self compassion is more about how we relate to ourselves in the moment during really difficult times. Um, so, you may respond to yourself with self care because you are realizing that you need self-compassion, but it's not something that you do on a regular basis. And then emotionally, self-love is associated with positive feelings of self-acceptance and happiness, whereas self-compassion is more about offering oneself kindness and understanding in the face of imperfection. And I think it's also really important to note that both of these affect all of our states. So when I say states, I'm talking about our emotional state, our physical state, our physiological state. All of our states of being are affected by both of these. And you can have one without the other, but you definitely need both.
Okay, when you talked about self-love and it means having boundaries and having self-care. So things that come to mind for people going through a divorce. You are engaging in self-love if you just tell your ex that for right now, you need to only text or email. You don't want to have long conversations about the past. For right now, you could say, I might be willing to do that in the future, but right now, I would like to just text about the kids and keep everything to the kids just for right now. That is having self-love because you love yourself enough not to expose yourself to this toxicity when this is the reason you're getting divorced in the first place. Another example of self-love, I would say, is going to the doctor when you know you need to go and not just putting it off because you're too busy with the kids and your job and the divorce. If you love yourself, you want yourself to be healthy. So when people think of like self care, they think, oh, a massage, mani pedi. And that is self care. That's good self care. But self care goes way beyond mani pedi spa day. Do you agree?
I agree on both of the things that you said regarding the boundaries. You're protecting yourself. You love yourself enough to know that you are worth protecting yourself. And so putting boundaries in place are one of the most important things that you can do at any time, but particularly a divorce. But I also want to say, recognizing that you want a divorce is self-love. That
Mhm.
is when you say, or having a conversation with your partner or your spouse and saying, I think the best thing for us is, to dissolve this marriage. That is self-love. It is not mean, it is not destructive, it's not impulsive. It's taking care of yourself and recognizing what you need in order to live a healthier life.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. I think there's so many people listening. This is what I find, and maybe you find this in your practice, Julie, but I get a big vibe with the DGS community that a lot of people have this immense guilt that they wanted a divorce because let's say the marriage wasn't working for them for like 10 years and they were miserable and they always knew it. And they finally said, okay, I have enough self love where I'm going to do this. And then the husband is begging them to stay together. The same husband who didn't want to go to therapy and who didn't want to work on the marriage and thought everything should stay status quo. And then these women start to feel guilty and if you love yourself, I say, do not engage in that guilt because it is so unproductive and it's not warranted. You should not feel guilty. What do you think?
I completely agree. And I also think that if it takes you X amount of time, you're working with a therapist and you're having a lot of reflection and you're doing a lot of introspective deep work about why you're unhappy and you realize this marriage is not for me. I don't want to hurt the other spouse, let's just say him. I don't want to hurt him, but I am hurting myself more by staying in this relationship. And I've lived in this unhealthy marriage for so long. My guilt has kept me here. My kids have kept me here. My fear has kept me here. Now I have to stop and say, what do I deserve? What is my worth? What am I, what should I put place as my value? And that's when you say, I deserve to be able to live a life that's happy without feeling guilty and letting my partner also have the opportunity to do that. I deserve that. And so, yes, all these things have kept me here for a really long time. And if I hadn't done all this reflection and introspective work, maybe I'd still be here for another 10 years, but because I love myself, I am in therapy. I am acknowledging that I am not happy and that this marriage is not where I want to stay.
I absolutely love that. We have a few minutes left. I want to go to the benefits of having self love and self compassion. So, if we haven't sold you enough, now we're going to sell you on why you should have self compassion and self love. And here's what you wrote, Julie: increase self awareness. So, understanding and checking in with yourself regularly to identify what you need emotionally, mentally, and physically. Tell me about that.
So,
Oh, oh, go ahead, because I
s-
kept reading and you wrote self-awareness leads to better decision making,
right.
and that's pretty important during a divorce.
Well, so it kind of goes back to the example of self love being a critical aspect, a critical part of your growth in order to be able to recognize that you need a divorce. So self-awareness is where everything begins. Whether it's, a personal issue that you have with your mom or something that you have with a coworker or in your marriage. If you are not aware of your part, of what you need, of what the problem is, then you're never going to be able to get to a point where you can make decisions. If you can increase your self-awareness, about your role, about your unhappiness, about what you want in the future, if you can increase your self-awareness, then you will be able to make decisions that feel like they're the right decisions.
And those are really important decisions too.
Absolutely.
Okay, also better coping skills.
Yep. If you are confident in what your worth is, what your value is, then you can figure out a way to manage what's going on better. So we can apply this to any situation. You know, if you have a job that you're not respected and you're not valued, you have a choice. And once you have that awareness about, this isn't me, this is my boss, this is the work environment, these are the expectations of the corporation. Once you have that awareness about why you feel undervalued, then you can figure out what to do with it. So there's the decision making, and you can develop better coping skills as to how to manage it. And the same thing applies to a divorce. You're in a marriage that it's just not working. You're not feeling it. And instead of fighting all the time, instead of shutting down, instead of gaslighting, instead of, you know, going on a spending spree because you're not getting anything at home, so you're getting it somewhere else. All those real things that are happening are not healthy coping skills. If you can start loving yourself and realize what you're worth and what you deserve, then you can develop better coping skills that will allow you to manage your life in a better way. And
I
ultimately,
was also gonna say, like, heavy drinking, drinking wine, binge eating, all that stuff are coping mechanisms, not good ones, to try to help you soothe your pain
right.
instead of, like, really working on your self-love and having self-compassion and really thinking, and I think self-confidence ties into a lot of this too. Like, have the confidence, and this is your next one. You will set stronger boundaries, and you'll be treated with more respect, so you'll have better self-respect if you have self-love and self-compassion, because you're gonna love yourself and say, "This is what I deserve," and you'll have that self-confidence to just say, "You know what? I deserve better than this."
Absolutely. I mean, from your own personal experience as well as from your whole um your whole organization that sometimes when people are going through a divorce, they don't start here and they don't even get here until they've been through a lot of really difficult things. But eventually, when you can look back at the process, where you were and where you are, it may seem really scary, but it's liberating. I mean, that liberation, that freedom of knowing I accomplished this, I survived this, is all about your self love. It's all
And
about,
and not only did I survive, but I'm doing great. I really survived. And then you get this empowerment and you're like, "Wow, I'm really cool. I am so much stronger than I ever thought I was." And that's a really wonderful feeling.
it is. It is. And all of that is because you love yourself enough to have made a decision that may have been painful, it may have been hard, it may have been costly, but in the end, it's because you are worth it.
Okay, now, Julie, one more question. If somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, how do I get self love and self compassion? Is there anything they can do, like any exercises or practical tips to help you find that self love and self compassion?
I think it's really important to stop having negative self talk. A lot of people who are experiencing anxiety, especially about a big decision like this, um, a lot of fear, they have a lot of negative self talk towards themselves. Like, I'm not going to be able to get divorced because I'm never going to be able to support myself. I'm not going to be able to get divorced because I don't even know how to buy an airline ticket on my own. How am I going to live on my own? Excuse me. So negative self-talk is something that you really need to work on. I mean, I strongly encourage anybody who's
I love that.
to work on this to be in therapy. Um, and with your therapist, you work on your self-esteem. You work on your inherent value and ways to build coping skills. You develop a tool chest. Um, there's a million self-help books out there, and of course, podcasts. It's It's not a one-day thing, it's a process, it takes time, and I think probably the first time you do something that's really scary, you make a decision and you become empowered, the first time you do it, it's as we said, it's liberating and it's confidence building, and once you become comfortable with that process, it becomes a lot easier to do more and more frequently.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I was going to suggest therapy and divorce coaching. Between the two people, they can both help you so much with self love and self compassion in very different ways, by the way. Julie, thank you so much. I really, really loved our conversation, and I'm so glad that you came on the show.
Thanks, as always, for having me, Jackie.
And if you want to talk to Julie or set up a consult, you can find Julie at northshorereach.com. You can also find Julie in the trusted professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling, which is divorcedgirlsmiling.com. And you can also go there to listen to more podcasts, read articles, sign up for my free consult, or find other trusted, vetted divorce professionals as well. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you real soon.